Happy True Crime Saturday, Channel Surfers. Welcome to Remote Reality. This is Lauren.
And this is Dee.
And instead of doing our typical, let's sit down and watch Dateline and Toxic and recap those true crime episodes, we're going to talk about the things that are going on recently and right now in the news, the hot trials of the year. We wrapped up Karen Read last week, so we're going to talk a little bit about that verdict. Right now, as we speak, it's Friday afternoon. Yes, we're recording early, but Diddy's defense, they just came back from lunch at 1:45. So yeah, they're about 25 minutes back into their closing arguments. And then also we're going to talk about Kohberger. On TikTok, some of the channel surfers brought up some questions about some new evidence floating around. There is a dash cam video from the DoorDash driver in an unrelated case. Also, the judge did rule on the defense's motion to continue yesterday. So we'll be covering that in today's episode. Let's get started.
Remote reality, yeah, that's the key. Unlocking stories wild and free. With the host, side by side. Channel surfers, let's ride.
And for our channel surfers watching on YouTube, we have a special treat with us today. Our fake Judge D is in the house.
Whoop, whoop, it's me, Judge D.
Judge D. So until she's more comfortable on camera, we're just going to try to entertain you with some bad photoshopped pictures. And for legal Bytes, what better than Judge D?
That's right.
Are you
But
a fair judge?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I'm a little country, little rock and roll, so I can go either way.
So let's jump right off with the Karen Read. This one was about a week ago. And in 16 years of practicing law, I've never seen a verdict like this.
No, me either.
I mean, I've watched some trials, O.J. Simpson, Susan Smith, and I've never seen anything like this before. The jury, they came back with basically one charge, guilty of one charge. She got a Dewey. She got a DUI.
And the crowd was going nuts. The cheering was off of the charts. She was like a freaking rock star to these people.
I mean, you could hear just these droves of people outside screaming. And I've never seen anything like that. How do you think those attorneys felt, her defense attorneys?
Well, you know, they had to feel good. I mean, that's a huge sense of accomplishment and then validation through all the cheering.
And they've worked hard. I mean, this is the second time they've gone to trial. I can't even imagine. One of our attorneys was moved to tears. It got me a little bit misty-eyed too. It did feel good. There have been huge cases, and that really was. It was like a rock star reaction. The closest thing I can think of is I had a criminal case. Probably close to 15 years ago. It was a long time ago. Actually, Dee, it was the first time you worked for me. We're not going to go into the specifics, but it was a very agitating one, and Dee quit during that case.
Yes, I did.
That case, that was a tough one. I don't blame you. I was ready to quit a few times as well, but I went and I argued a motion to dismiss for failure to do a speedy trial. And the judge took it under advisement. It was a 2-hour argument. I actually had to miss bankruptcy court. I had to have someone cover for me that day. But I turned around and the courtroom was standing when I turned around. Everybody in the room waiting on their hearings, everybody was standing. And some guy in the front of the room said, "Good job, counselor." And
wow.
I still remember that. I mean, that was probably 12, 13, 14 years ago, something like that. And that felt really good. But I can't imagine just the cheers. It was just a really, really cool verdict to watch.
It was.
And how do you think the prosecution felt?
Well, I think they're having a very bad day.
They've had a few bad days. I was surprised they brought these charges a second time after the first trial.
Yeah, me too.
So, I mean, I wonder how, if at all, that reaction impacted their decision to agree with the defense in sentencing. So what happened was after the jury was called, the judge asked both sides, the prosecution and the defense, how long do you think you're going to need for us to, wrap this up with the sentencing hearing? Now, during sentencing hearings, you're going to have evidence that's mitigating to try to lessen the sentence for the defendant. So you can put witnesses on, but they took like 2 seconds and the defense went up to the prosecution, came back and said, let's go now.
My goodness, yeah.
They didn't want to call anybody. The defense said, we want the basic charge. We want the basic punishment for this charge, which is 1 year prosecution. That's what you get for a first DUI. And the prosecution said, all right, it sounds good to us. I mean, that was it. Judge said, all right, everybody agrees. Cool. You get the basic charge. They weren't upping it because of the other charges that were brought, which really is the fair thing to do. She was found not guilty on the other charges. The one that she was guilty of, the first time DUI, give her what any first time DUI would get if they weren't guilty of anything else.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense.
So I thought it was very fair. And I just wonder if the cheering crowd at all made the prosecution go, look, we've lost this thing twice. I mean, they didn't technically lose the first one. It was a mistrial, hung jury, but they didn't win it.
I think they finally just realized maybe they should just throw in the towel. So
it was also a Friday afternoon. So they were probably thinking, okay, whatever. We're not going to, just give them the standard. It's fine.
Yeah, we're done.
You don't want to drag it off into the weekend. Now, there's still some legal issues surrounding Karen Reed and the allegations that she killed John O'Keefe. His family is suing her as well as 2 bars. She's being sued for wrongful death, and they're seeking a $50,000 judgment in civil court. And the 2 bars are being charged with negligently serving alcohol to intoxicated people. What do you think about that, Dee?
So since it's a civil case, it's probably a lower burden of proof, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And that is where it might work out. Do you remember OJ?
I do. Nicole's family sued civilly, right? I think they won,
Yes.
if I remember correctly.
They did win. They did in the civil case, because civil case, the burden of proof, what the person suing has to prove is that it's more likely than not that this happened. Just a tip of the scales, just a featherweight. Whereas in a criminal case, that is the highest burden of proof in law. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. Highest burden of proof you have to prove in any case. We're only looking at a tip of the scales here. And with OJ, the same thing. Beyond a reasonable doubt, if the glove don't fit,
Don't wear it.
you must acquit.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh. Not you must have quit. You must quit. All right. So Dee didn't watch OJ. I don't remember it.
My memory is shot. I don't remember anything past like 5 minutes ago.
Like, girl, it's a weekend.
It's Friday.
It's Friday. Well, it's Saturday for the channel surfers, but yeah, it's Friday for us. All right. So yeah, in the civil suit, the family was able to prove slightly more likely than not that OJ was culpable for the deaths of Nicole and Ron. And that's why he lived in Florida. Did you know this part, Dee? He lived in Florida after the civil verdict because Florida has that unlimited homestead exemption.
I did not know that.
Yes. So let's talk this part. Dee and I do this kind of stuff a lot in bankruptcy. There are assets that people have, and there are laws to protect those assets under state law, even some under federal law. Those are called exemptions. Those are laws that protect your property. Now, a lot of states have limits on how much of your house you can protect from a judgment creditor. Someone sues you and gets a judgment. Each state is different. In South Carolina, it's a little bit more than $70,000 in equity per person. But Florida has this like golden ticket. You can have a house worth whatever with whatever amount of equity, and it's 100% protected. So that's why OJ went to Florida, because he could buy a house and they couldn't take it from the civil case.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yes. And again, this is not legal advice. These are just my opinions for entertainment purposes only. I only practice in South Carolina jurisdiction. So, but but I do have to use Florida and federal exemptions at times. In bankruptcy, it kind of depends on where you move from. All right, I'm about to become a bankruptcy encyclopedia and just bore everybody to death.
So as far as Karen, but with someone like Karen Reed, how do they expect to get paid? I mean, I'm sure she doesn't just have $50,000 laying around, or potentially even equity in something that much.
And OJ, he was a sports star. He had $1 million contracts. So this is that deep pockets thing. Who do you go after? Now, sometimes attorneys look at insurance. What will insurance cover? But insurance isn't going to have a policy for if I murder someone. That's an intentional tort. So it really just depends on what the laws allow in her state, what assets she has, what can be protected, whether or not they allow wage garnishment for that type of creditor, which South Carolina, where I practice, we are in the minority of states because there are a lot of preclusions on wage garnishment. It's not a total, you can't garnish. There are some exceptions, but it makes it a little bit harder to collect. On the other hand, she hasn't had a job in a while. She was a professor when all of this started, and she has not been employed. Really, I don't know that she is collectible. And maybe that's why they're going on a low amount to see if they could negotiate a settlement from that. I'm not sure.
Maybe it's not money at all. Maybe it's just to get
Principal.
Yeah.
Also, I wonder if that in any way plays into the cases against the establishments for over-serving people negligently. So presumably they would have some sort of insurance. And even if they didn't, these are businesses that likely have assets that could be taken. So I wonder if perhaps suing her plays into those charges.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The negligent serving of alcohol. So definitely interesting. So not over completely with Karen Reed. We are going to see what happens in that civil trial. Moving on to the Diddy case. Did he do it? We are going to find out, I would guess, next week. I don't think this is going to be a quick verdict. These are complicated charges. I think the jury is going to want to deliberate. Now, some things that might motivate them that shouldn't. Next week is the 4th of July. They might be trying to get out of there before then. Court would be closed on the 4th of July, but the judge could still make the jury come in. So, they've sat through a lot of trial, like 7 weeks of it. It's not supposed to influence them, but I can't say that it may not inadvertently influence them.
No, they're human. I would definitely probably influence me.
Absolutely. So yesterday, or Thursday, for everybody listening tomorrow, I got to keep reminding myself we are filming this on Friday. So yeah, on Thursday, the prosecution, they delivered a comprehensive and damning argument. They are saying that by force and coercion, Sean Combs committed sex trafficking, distribution of drugs, transporting people for sex over state lines. These are all really hard allegations to hear. And some of the evidence and the testimony that we've seen, it's hard to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah, the video of him and Cassie at the hotel where he's hitting on her and dragging her down the hall, just disgusting.
Absolutely disgusting. It clearly domestic violence happened there. And you're going to hear, or you have heard, the defense say that in their closing. They are straight up admitting that was domestic violence. Now, why does that matter? Well, these RICO charges that the federal government has brought against Sean Combs, they're required to prove different elements, different parts of this crime beyond a reasonable doubt. Every element has to be proven to that high standard. One of those are going to be predicate offenses. The predicate offenses, that is one part that they have to prove. And they have to show that 2 predicate offenses were committed by a criminal enterprise in the last 10 years. So what is a predicate offense? There is a list of predicate offenses that fit into the RICO Act. Domestic violence is not one of them. That's why the defense saying, yeah, he committed domestic violence, it doesn't fall under RICO. So it's not going to hurt the case. And it's very clearly domestic violence. You see physical abuse. Now, what do we have under RICO? RICO, you're going to have things for predicate crimes like sex trafficking, arson, bribery, distribution of narcotics, kidnapping. Those are some of those predicate defenses. And that's what they're trying to show. This is why the sex trafficking comes into play, requiring somebody to do something by use of force. This is a complicated charge. I don't know if the jury is going to be able to process these facts beyond a reasonable doubt. This was the prosecution. They delivered a 5-hour closing.
My gosh, that poor jury.
To me, the first thing I think is that they have to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. There should be a simple, straightforward proof, and they spent 5 hours trying to fit this square peg into a round hole.
Exhausting. And if they're anything like me, you know, I said 5 minutes, I forget something. I can't imagine something that was done 4 hours ago and trying to remember it at the end.
I think that's one of the concerns for the prosecution is these are complex charges. Now, another thing, throughout the trial, they had charges of arson and kidnapping against Sean Combs. Those were dropped 3 days ago. They were dropped on the 25th.
Ooh. Do you think it was maybe to try and simplify some of this stuff?
Exactly what it was. The federal government, I keep saying state. The federal government, though, I have to remember this is a federal case in the federal districts. They said they're trying to streamline this case. They know they've presented a lot of information. They know that it's going to be hard to point all of the facts together to connect the dots in this closing. So I think that their strongest evidence they feel they have is the sex trafficking, and they drop these other two because it's not as, the evidence doesn't speak as much. Now, another thing is you don't have to prove that the predicate offense happened. So they could still find that arson or kidnapping were one of the predicate offenses. And the burden of proving that, it's actually smaller than if you were actually trying to prove arson or kidnapping. So if you're proving arson or kidnapping, you have that beyond a reasonable doubt. If you're proving them as a predicate act for RICO, what you have to show is that the government could have charged him with it. And the burden of proof for bringing charges is very, very low. To bring a criminal charge, we have a standard of probable cause, which is a crime might have happened. There's some evidence there may have been a crime. It doesn't even have to be admissible evidence when you are taking this in front of a grand jury, if you're doing an indictment. Some places, like I know in our state, you can waive an indictment, but it's a very low standard. So they may just feel like they didn't have what they needed to get to beyond a reasonable doubt. It might confuse the jury if they're saying, well, this didn't happen, and then trying to use it as a predicate offense for RICO. It's definitely an interesting strategy. I don't know that it helps or hurts, but the jury can't unhear what they've heard as far as the evidence in this trial that go toward arson and kidnapping. So does the jury still have that kind of unanswered question in their minds as they go into deliberations?
Good question.
What do you think? If you were a juror and you had heard evidence about potentially Sean Combs trying to light someone's car on fire, allegedly.
Probably couldn't unhear it. It would definitely be something that was in the back of my mind that I would focus on.
Now, what if the judge says, look, you guys cannot consider certain things?
I think, again, that's probably going to be really hard once you've heard it.
Right. I agree. And it's still going to be relevant, though, because the predicate offense is just going to be a lower standard. These are just complicated charges that they're bringing. And juries, they're unpredictable. So I guess depending on your jury, that could be a strength or a weakness. The jury has seen a lot of grotesque things in this trial that they can't unsee. They've heard grotesque things that they can't unhear. From a morality standpoint, they might be willing to find guilty even if they maybe aren't beyond a reasonable doubt. Not that they're not supposed to do that. They are supposed to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but they might not have that sympathy for for Diddy. I mean, I don't have sympathy for him after what I've seen.
Me either. Yeah, I think you're making a very valid point.
But they've got to put that aside. Question is, can they? And this is something that they would have asked in jury selection. But that's exactly what the defense is saying in these closing arguments. They're saying this is a morality crime. They are just judging his swinger lifestyle and his really poor judgment and abuse with women. And they are trying to turn this into a RICO charge. They've been kind of sarcastic too. So one of the defense attorneys was saying, oh, wow, they got some baby oil and Astra glide off the streets. Don't we all feel safer now? Just kind of showing, this, my client, he's abusive. No lie. He is a sex fiend. He makes bad mistakes in relationships, but it's not some mafia style enterprise that he's using to commit these crimes. So I don't know. It's always a question with jurors. Are they going to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? We're going to have to wait and see. I think we see this next week. I don't think we're going to get an answer over the weekend. And I can see both sides. I can see people just being so disgusted by what Sean Combs has done that they're ready to lock him up. I can also see them being confused by the charges, these very complex charges that the state has to prove. It's going to be interesting, and I think we'll know more next week. But I've said from the beginning, since we covered the Diddy Dateline, these are not the charges I would expect, and they're going to be difficult to grasp, difficult to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So we just have to see, does he deserve jail time for what he's done? Yeah. Has he done what they're alleging he did? We'll see. We will see. All right. So moving on to Kohberger, Bryan Kohberger. Yesterday, which would be Thursday, 2 days ago for the Saturday release, Kohberger's judge came back on the defense's motion to continue the trial because of that Dateline episode and to suppress evidence. And the judge decided they're moving forward. They're going to be picking a jury early August. I think it's August 4th. And the trial now is set to start on August 18th. We will be covering that trial. I'm very excited to see what happens.
Yeah, me too. It's been a while since we sat through these trials. So I'm looking forward to it again.
Absolutely. And the fact that this has been under a gag order just makes it all the more alluring because we don't know what we're going to see in this trial. There's this air of mystery to it. When we get there, we'll know.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. We're like, what is this? What do they know? And we're like, I can't wait for the trial to find out what it is.
But as far as what we know, it's very limited. Years ago, at the beginning of this case, when Kohberger was arrested, we were able to see the indictment paperwork, which that may not even be admissible evidence. That is the state's allegations. That's the probable cause. It's a very low burden of what can be proved. Then we have what we've seen in the Dateline episode, which I've posted some of those highlights recently on TikTok and Instagram, talking about suspect vehicle number 1 and how that appears to be an Indiana car in the police dash cam video that we saw in Dateline. Also about Winco Foods, which is the closest 24-hour grocery store to Bryan Kohberger's home. And we know where his home is because the Dateline episode had it on the ticket where he got pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt at that intersection right in front of the Winco Foods, which that Winco Foods 1.8 miles from the house on King Road. So cell towers, it doesn't show you exactly where the person is. It just means that they're using a cell tower that covers that same location. They usually cover up to a 5-mile radius. So if he's 1.8 miles from the house on King Road grocery shopping, he could be pinging off that cell tower. And a night owl grocery shopping at the closest 24-hour grocery store that's 15 minutes away, not super suspicious to me.
No, I wouldn't think so either, especially if it's the only 24-hour grocery store around him.
Closest one. We Google mapped it. But Dateline tries to say it's suspicious that his phone is pinging off cell towers 11 times in the months leading up to this murder. How many times do you go to the grocery store in a few months?
Gosh,
11
maybe
times?
Yeah, maybe a dozen.
So And the fact that he's a night owl, again, he's from the East Coast, baby. He just moved there from Pennsylvania. So I don't know that my sleeping order would even be a priority. If I was trying to get my PhD, I would be making sure I got my stuff in, got my papers graded for being a TA. So yeah, we posted about that. And then one of our channel surfers on TikTok had a great question. She came and said, will you please explain to the class about the new police video of the DoorDash driver? And I didn't know what she was talking about. I was like, can you explain to me what you're talking about? That wasn't in the Dateline episode. So this is exciting. This is where we're kind of going off the rails away from the Dateline and looking a little bit deeper into everything. She thankfully pointed me in the right direction. Thank you so much. And I have looked at a lot of different stuff. Saw some footage of it. And then I was like, this can't be it. The way these people are talking, we're not seeing it all. So we just kept looking for more footage and more footage. And I think we've got a pretty good idea of what happened.
Yes, it was very interesting.
So interesting. So the DoorDash driver in the Kohberger case, we all remember that around 4 a.m., we were told this in the Dateline episode. I think we might have seen this in the indictment as well. But around 4 a.m., Xana Kernodle got a DoorDash delivery. Just minutes before, according to the Dateline, we see Bryan Kohberger's, allegedly, car come up and pull up to the house. And that's the last time until around 4:20 that we see that car on the neighbor's Ring video or whatever security footage they have. But around 4:07, you see that white car approaching again, and then it doesn't leave the area until 4:20. So around 4 o'clock, this is when they're saying the DoorDash happened. Now, this DoorDash driver was recently in an unrelated altercation. She was pulled over not for the first time, but for the second time in recent history, and is alleged to have been driving under the influence. So the terrible night on King Road, that was back in 2022. Now in September of 2024, we're going to call her MM because that's what they call her in the dash cam video. We don't know her name, but MM, we've got her being pulled over by the police, and we see her at the traffic stop where she's telling the police, I would fail a field sobriety test. We see her in the backseat of the car going to the station. We see her talking at the station. Now, bear with me. I know you're all thinking, oh, this is 2.5 years later. Like, why do we even care about it? Why is this relevant? It's not even part of this case. D, what's going on in the media?
Well, yeah, because when they ask her if she's been doing drugs, she says, well, yes, I'm a witness in the Kohberger case.
Yeah, no, she doesn't say yes. She just starts volunteering that she's going to be a witness. She's going to be a witness in that murder case. And that's not all that she volunteers. So her first excuse, police pull her over. Does she have drugs in the car?
No. So when she gets pulled over, she just starts volunteering that she's a witness in the Kohberger case.
She's just spilling a lot of stuff. She's telling the police an awful lot, not just about the Kohberger case. Now, how would you say her demeanor is in this video?
Well, you can definitely tell that she is not sober. You can also tell that she appears to actually have some physical ailments. Maybe she's saying that she has, I think, arthritis and fibromyalgia. So she definitely seems to have some physical pain.
And that's the first thing that she tells police when they pull her over. Now, we know this isn't the first time. This is the second time because apparently during the stop, she also has a pending charge where they're waiting on the blood test results from that sobriety test, meaning that that was pretty recent as well. So she has very recently experienced being pulled over for the exact same charge, actually in the exact same car. It's so recent, they don't even have the blood test results back. So she knows what she's up against. And the first thing she does is try to explain its prescription and her use for it is because of her body problems. She says fibromyalgia, she says arthritis, then she throws in nerve damage. And how does that go over with the police?
They don't care.
They don't care. They're like,
they don't care. Not at all.
I'm sorry you're in pain, but you're driving under the influence. So then the police start asking her, well, hey, lady, do you have drugs in this car? Are these your drugs?
Nope. Those aren't her drugs. If there's drugs in that car. It's not hers. It's not even her car.
She starts off just adamant. There are no drugs in that car. What are you talking about, drugs in that car? And then she goes on to say, well, this is my boyfriend's car. And
Threw him completely under the bus.
throws him right under the bus. Like, all right, well, they're not taking my sob story about being hurt. Let's just say anything that's in there, I don't know about it. It's his fault. And I guess he's still letting her drive his car, even though she's got a pending charge out of it. I'm sure he's not very happy right now.
Maybe he doesn't even know she's driving it.
Maybe she doesn't even know she's driving it, honestly. So then we see her in the back seat of the police officer's car, and she is still looking for some sympathy here. She says, I'm supposed to be a witness in this murder trial. And if I get a DUI, she literally says, if I get a DUI, they're going to kill me. In other words, the prosecution who's expecting her to testify is going to kill her if these police officers have the audacity to give her a DUI.
Mm-hmm. They don't care about that either.
No, they're like, I think they're going to be more concerned that you're drugged up and driving. And she explains that this is the Kohberger case. So then she's taken inside the jail. You see her being processed. We've got another officer with her, and she's going to try to drum up some sympathy again. She starts talking about the Kohberger case, and now it's not just her physical ailments, which have caused her to take this medication, which she also says she's been on for years and years and years. This isn't a new thing. We're going to throw a whole bunch of more excuses in there on why she's on this medication, because maybe they'll feel bad and not arrest her, right? Kohberger, she says that night she pulled right up to his car and saw him and sat beside him. This is the first time I've heard this.
Yeah, she said she parked right beside him and looked him straight in the eye.
Didn't see that in the indictment.
Mm-mm.
And this is being told while she's throwing basically every excuse under the bus that she can to try to get out of this DUI. It is her second one. You're going to have typically a heightened penalty for a DUI second. Now, I had to go back and watch the Dateline the night on King Road, because this wasn't adding up to what I remembered happening. And what we see on the night on King Road is the neighbor's house, that security cam, and a white car that they're alleging is Bryan Kohberger's car. It's really hard to see. The lights are just so bright, but we see it driving back and forth, and it's coming around the corner. It's going, if you look at Google Maps, it's going to the house that's in front of the King Road house where the murders happened. And off to the side, there's also a bunch of apartments. It could be somebody like going through those apartments. We don't know what it is, but they're saying that that's Bryan Kohberger. And I went back and looked at the Dateline episode, looked at the timestamps. So you see him going through there, or whoever it was, at 3:56, at 3:58, again at 4:06, and then at 4:07, you see the car come back through, and it doesn't leave until 4:20. Now, on one of the crime channels on YouTube, they said that the car came by at 4:04. That was not in the Dateline episode, so I don't know if there's another one that we're missing, but what they're alleging in Dateline is that he's just kind of like circling, just kind of checking the area out, trying to decide whether or not he's going to do this. At what point has he stopped and parked his car in their driveway? If we see his car at 3:56, if we see his car leaving at 3:58, if we see his car coming back at 4:06, at what point has he stopped to where she would park beside him?
It doesn't show him parked in the videos. It just shows him circling or coming in and out of the street.
Doesn't show another car that's driving in the videos either. Not what we've seen. And again, there's a gag order. There's a lot we don't know. But if we're going to believe MM's story of this night, then around 4 o'clock, she delivers the food. When she pulls up, Bryan Kohberger's sitting there. We had just seen a car at 3:58. Maybe it's just a difference in the camera times. It's hard to tell. But we do see that white car leave again, come back again. It comes back for the last time at 4:07. So we're talking a good 7 minutes before. And that's the first time we've heard any of this. Additionally, at 4:12, we have Xana posting on TikTok. So 12 minutes after the food is dropped off, We have Xana posting on TikTok. And then at 4:17, that's when on the Dateline episode, you hear the dog barking and the argument between people in the house, and then a big thud. So that's at 4:17, and you see the white car pulling away at 4:20. So this just raises a lot of questions to me. I've had questions about the timeline, but did he pull in there for like 1 second, park the car, and then a car pulled up beside him and he decided to come back 10 minutes later and commit the crime after he's parked beside somebody where they could see him?
I don't know, just a lot of questions. It'll be interesting to watch when it starts.
Absolutely. But he's supposed to be this criminal mastermind. You would think if someone parked beside him, he might leave and not come back 10 minutes later.
You would think.
You would think. Also, MM says that she has been on these pain pills for a long time. She cites her physical problems, the fibromyalgia, the nerve damage, talks about another emotional thing. You know, nothing sticking. These cops aren't buying her physical ailments. They don't care. They don't care that she's going to be a witness in the Kohberger case. So what's her next way to try to wiggle out of this?
She says that she witnessed her husband being murdered right in front of her.
Shot 9 times. And the officer says, where was this murder?
And she said Moscow.
Moscow, Idaho. And you know what's interesting? She's 44 years old. So I went and looked. One thing I remember about this case is that there weren't a lot of murders in Moscow. It had been since 2015 since there was a murder. But let's go. I mean, this is her husband, whatever. Let's say she got married at 14 and go back 30 years. How many murders have been in Moscow? One was a college student back in 98. Did not have M for a last name. She might have changed her name since, but college student in 98. One was a triple homicide. It was a landlord, this guy's mom, and some other person, but it doesn't appear that these from 2015 were connected to her. And then you have the Moscow 4. Statistically, what are the chances that in the last 30 years and 3 different crimes, she's linked to 2 of them?
That is so odd. Like the odds would be extremely high that something like that would happen.
She watched her husband get shot, which we don't see anything about an eyewitness in these other Moscow murders. And she says it happens in Moscow. Does this excuse work on the police? Does this get her out of the DUI?
No,
it
doesn't.
Doesn't work. Doesn't work. To me, she is changing her story. She's dealt with police before. There's no drugs in there. And then, oh, it's my boyfriend's car. And then, you know, I'm taking the medicine because I have all of these problems, nerve damage, fibromyalgia, arthritis. And then that changes to, well, it's because I have to be a testify in this case. And at first she's just saying she has to testify, which she could be having to testify. She could be helping create a timeline. She's not necessarily called as a witness to testify that she saw him. It could just help them establish a timeline. We don't know. And then she goes, I'm testifying against Bryan. She just says Bryan. And then she says that she saw him there that night. So it's like it keeps escalating, the trying to get a reaction almost out of the police. And when that doesn't work, well, I saw my husband killed in Moscow. And yeah, that's part of the reason she's taken the medication is because of all of that too. She's been taking it for a long time. So I've got so many questions.
Yeah, and she's not getting anywhere with the police. She's still going to get charged.
She's still charged with 2 of them. I think that her volunteering all of this stuff and the way she's waffling, and the fact that this is coming up over 2 years later when she's between a rock and a hard place because she's getting charged with her second DUI, I think this is all a little bit sus.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, was he sitting there without a mask on and then he decides to just roll back up 10 minutes later and commit the murders, even though someone just saw him there with his car without a mask on?
I would think it might be a little bit easier to say that, you know, she was like passing him on the road or something, parking right beside of him. That's really far-fetched.
Especially since we see the car circling the block. It does not appear that he's parking.
Yeah, that's the reason why I said I would think maybe more just passing each other.
And even at that, it's nighttime. It's 4 a.m. She's 44 years old. Is she getting a real good look at this guy's face?
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I'm half blind. So I've 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm lucky to see anything at night when I'm driving. But another question, was she on this medication at that time? When did this husband of hers die? When did she get these medical problems that she's saying is the reason she's saying it's legitimate for her to take these pills, which is fine. It can be legitimate for you to take medication that's prescribed to you, but you shouldn't operate if you're influenced under it. What are the chances that she was sober that night?
I think it would raise questions for sure.
So many questions. Now we have one other eyewitness, which is Dylan, the roommate. And we're told in the Dateline episode, she can't pick Kohberger out of the lineup. Not once, but at least 4 times. She does not pick him. We're also told in the Dateline episode, there's no links to him and the victims, not even on social media. They can't even trace it on social media. But then they try to say that the way he got acquainted with the house layout is from TikTok. I'm sorry, rewind. Dateline, you said that he's not on the social media. I just have a lot of questions right now. I am not convinced. I'm even more questioning this because you have the police leaking evidence in violation of a gag order. This is evidence that would be in police custody and in the state's custody. Now, the defense would have it as well, but this leak, it's coming from sources close to the investigation. This sounds like Dateline got it from investigators, from police. What are they doing? Violating this gag order? Do they really care about constitutional right?
Interesting. I hadn't even thought about that until you said, how are they getting this information?
They don't want it to be a fair trial. They want to argue it on Dateline, where you can't question the credibility of witnesses. They want to argue it on YouTube, where 2 years later, you see a drunk person throwing all kinds of excuses under the bus for why she's taken these drugs. And some of them you can't even verify. Like her husband was murdered in Moscow. There haven't been that many murders. So it's all very interesting. Another part of this case that I think complicates things, July 1st, there's scheduled to be a book being released about Kohberger.
Who's releasing a book?
This guy, but what information does he have? There's a gag order. Where is he getting information?
Exactly.
I've got so many questions, but the defense, I think they're doing everything that they possibly can. They're definitely setting this up for appeal. They've made the motions that they need to make. And it looks like we're going to be finding out more real soon. August 4th, jury trial selections, and then we will be covering this case.
We are
13th.
there. I am so stoked. I cannot wait.
When they said it was going to be pushed back to this point, I was like, oh, man. But I get it. It's a capital murder case. Your client's life is at risk. Look, I looked at a Dateline episode for an hour and picked a few things out. That's not what this defense team is doing. They are sorting through all kinds, like terabytes and terabytes of information, trying to find what's relevant in the case. And the judge is saying, okay, well, you know what? Defense, get some more people on the case. Great. But at the end of the day, your lead attorney is still responsible for reviewing the evidence, making sure that the right things go into trial. So I don't blame her for wanting time to review this huge amount of evidence. Looking at a show for an hour, it's nothing compared to what they're having to do. And that's it for True Crime Saturday and our first installment of Lauren's Legal Bytes. That was kind of fun to talk about cases that are happening now instead of just recapping a show.
It was. I enjoyed it.
I did too. I love giving my thoughts on the legal stuff. I guess that's why I do this. Anyway, we wanted to remind our channel surfers, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for giving us a chance. We're new here. We've been here about 2 months now, and we want to sweeten your summer. So anybody that has joined our Facebook group already and anybody who joins through September 1st, we're going to enter all of those names in a drawing, and we're going to do the same thing for everybody who leaves us written 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. We're going to put those names in a hat and draw one of those names at a chance to win $50. You gave us a chance. We want to give you a chance to sweeten your summer. We thought that would be fun and just kind of a way to say thank you to our first channel surfers. That's you guys. Woo!
We appreciate you guys so much.
We love you guys so much. And thank you for listening. So if you're not on our Facebook page, go join our Facebook, Remote Reality. You can see us on YouTube, this full episode, Remote Reality. You can find the full episodes on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Also, we are posting highlights on TikTok and Instagram from our episodes, so you can come find us over there. Please leave some comments. I love engaging with everyone. You guys have such great insight. On TikTok, I've learned so much from the channel servers. There's some awesome points that are being made. And I just love hearing your opinions. Your opinions definitely matter. And it's fun to examine somebody else's point of view. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let Dee know what you think. We will be back soon. We are going to do the poop cruise on Netflix. Wow. Yeah. Anything to say on that? What to expect on this one, Dee?
Probably a lot of WTFs, probably a lot of shit flying around. The word literally. Yeah. But I expect to hear a lot of shit words.
It's going to be a shit show. And I think the irony in it is the name of the cruise is Triumph. And the first thing I thought is Triumph, the insult comment dog, whose phrase is for me to poop on. So yeah, it's all just tying in so nicely.
The irony.
The irony. All right, channel surfers, we will be back with the poop cruise, and then we'll be back on Tuesday with 90 Day Hunt for Love. Thank you for tuning in. Y'all have a great Saturday, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Let's ride.